we assume that there is an objective reality. But all the indications are there may not be. So what if there weren't anything there? So this is the second unquestioned assumption of the current meta-paradigm, that there is an objective reality. The alternative view is there is only consciousness. But it is structured consciousness. It is a mind field which has perturbations, fluctuations, variations, which we experience and translate in the mind into shape and color and form and matter and all this stuff. But it's actually consciousness observing the consciousness field and then creating all these appearances in the mind itself. The alternative meta-paradigm is there is nothing but consciousness. So consciousness is more fundamental than space-time and matter. Space-time and matter exists, but at a more gross level of manifestation, which we'll look at it briefly. What I see is there is consciousness, but because it's differentiated, it starts appearing in like little knots of consciousness. This, I suspect, is what people talk about the vacuum state in physics, the zero-point field that underlies the whole of material creation, which gives rise to particles bubbling out of it. Or someone mentioned string theory yesterday. We don't know what the strings are made of. We talk a lot about the strings as being dimensions, knotted dimensions in space. Supposing the strings are actually strings of consciousness, then what we have is consciousness observing itself. So there is only consciousness. Variations in the consciousness field are perceived as an image in the mind. So the material world that we know of is the appearance in the mind. In the actual world out there, there is nothing there, no thing there. It's not nothing, but there's no thing. Thingness is something which the mind creates. The mind turns experience into things. But maybe there isn't a thinginess to the world. There is no thinginess there. Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation said, matter derives from mind, not mind from matter. Now starts beginning to make more sense. So we know there is not matter. It also turns out there isn't space or time either. This was Einstein's realization with the special theory of relativity, which he realized the speed of light is absolute, the same for all observers, whatever their speed, which was a complete weird thing at the time. You know, if you're traveling down the road in a car at 40 miles an hour and somebody passes you at 60 miles an hour, they go past you 20 miles an hour faster, right? If light goes past you, light travels 186,000 miles an hour, you don't subtract the 40. It goes to 186 miles a second, it's much faster than that. You don't subtract the 40. Even if you're traveling at 9/10 the speed of light, it still goes past you at the speed of light, not 1/10. All observers measure the speed of light to be the same. The revolutionary thing that came out of that was that space and time are not constant, but vary with the speed of the observer. Space and time are not fixed. So, if a stationary observer observes a ray of light going by, and it goes 186,000 miles in 1 second. Somebody moving at 87% the speed of light, that's just the way the mathematics work out, would see half that amount of distance and half that amount of time. But the speed would still be the same. 93,000 miles in half a second is 186,000 miles a second. Someone moving at 99.5% the speed of light sees a tenth of that, 18,000 miles in a tenth of a second. Still the same speed. And what Einstein realized was there was something called the space-time continuum, out of which space and time both appear. The space-time continuum, he made clear, is not like space, it's not like time, it's not a mixture of the two. It's something we don't know. It's like Kant described, it's the noumenon. We can never actually know it. What we know is the space and time it gives rise to. But it never gives rise to the same amounts of space and time. Different observers see different amounts of space and time. So space and time vary. What he showed was there's something in space-time called the interval, which is like the equivalent of distance or seconds. The interval is actually the subtraction of the square of space and time. It's actually the square root of that. And that turns out to always be constant. So in space-time, there is a constant. The distance in space-time never changes, although what we experience as space and time changes. So this led to some more weird things about light. What happens if you actually travel at 100% the speed of light? If you look at the way things are going, you're right. Light experiences itself traveling no distance in no time. From light's point of view, light does not exist in space and time. As Fred was saying at the opening, the birth and death of a photon are the same moment. Light doesn't experience itself traveling through space and time. There is no non-locality for light. It is one phenomena in one moment. This is light's point of view. So the reason for this is that the space-time interval in the space-time continuum for light is always zero. Always zero. So from light's point of view, no space, no time, no mass. Light does not exist in the world of space, time, and matter. So what do we make of this thing called the constant speed? I put speed in quotes deliberately. What we observe as speed, I don't think is speed at all. When I observe a light beam traveling from, the back of the room to my eye, in space-time, the beginning and end of that light beam are the same. Space-time is bent so that they are the same. In my frame of reference, I stretch out that zero interval into space and time. And I always stretch out 186,000 miles of space for every second of time. And if I'm moving very fast, I stretch out that much. Moving slower, that much. Really slow, I stretch out that much. So I don't think c is a speed at all. It's the constant ratio of manifestation of space and time. For every 186,000 miles of space that appears, 1 second of time appears. And again, Kant was onto this 200 years ago. He said space and time are the framework within which the mind is constrained to construct its experience of reality. He didn't see that space and time were part of the external world. They're part of the mind. And it was 100 years later that Einstein came along and showed that he was true. And I think if we ever give a name to this revolution in consciousness, just as we talk about the revolution in the view of the Earth as the Copernican revolution, because Copernican started it, I think this revolution in consciousness we should really call the Kantian revolution. And it's only 200 years. Copernican revolution took 150 years. We're only 200 years into this revolution, and it's much, much more fundamental. So space and time don't exist. Matter doesn't exist. Energy, we often think, is fundamental. We all talk about energy as the universe is energy. Turns out it isn't. And this comes to the other great breakthrough of the 20th century, same year as Einstein's theory of relativity, and Einstein was involved in this, quantum theory, and again to do with light. Fascinating enough, it's problems with light that started off quantum theory. And what Max Planck showed was that light comes in discrete packets of energy. These are called photons. Before that, it was thought that light was smooth, continuous, and he showed it comes in packets, amounts. The word quanta actually means amount. And it's actually a quantum, not of energy, it's actually a quantum of action, which is often missed. Planck's constant is called the quantum of action.